Hey, good morning. Yes, it is sunshine. It is Monday, March 10th. Time to get up, and hopefully, you turned your clocks ahead so you lost an hour of sleep. So that means you need to be at work an hour earlier today to be on time. So, speaking of time, what are we talking about today? Well, it's going to be kind of a mixture of my daily antics and some of the responses that kind of stuck with me. So stay tuned. Alrighty, welcome back to the channel. My name is Eric, and yes, today is Monday, March 10th. And it's also the weekday, Monday through Friday. Today is Monday, guys. So, what are we going to talk about today? Well, I thought you had a great point, Amos. You know, when it comes to, I had mentioned about writing a book, and it's not writing a book for other people per se. It's, at the very least, it's part of my recovery because there were so many things that I forgot, that I buried, and a lot of people will tell you, let dead dogs lie, right? And what I found in my lifespan is that if you don't deal with issues at those times, it ends up being like a ticking time bomb, right? And it can explode at any time, any place, anywhere. So if I've got a choice of how I'm going to try to dismantle that ticking time bomb, the best way to do it is to sit down and try to break it into manageable pieces. See it for what it is. Come to terms with it. Do what I can do if there's anything I can do about it, and then move forward. So that it's not sitting there simmering underneath, right? And that happens to a lot of people. You know, whether it's a death of a loved one or a really bad breakup where words were said in anger, or for me, lying on a cold table in the OR of hearing voices but not being able to make any sense of it, and also trying to move and I couldn't move. I had totally forgotten about that. But yet it was just lying simmering underneath. And my sister, had mentioned about putting together a book, writing a book. And I found the more I wrote, the more I kind of outed things that could come up and slap me across the face years later. It's kind of funny because when we think of losing a loved one, it might be a smell, might be a sound, it might be a song, or something you read that reminds you of someone you loved very much that have already gone to the next level. And let me add, I believe in God. I'm not a Bible pushing, preaching, so don't worry about that. But I also believe that you go to a higher level, and that those that have passed before you are still here if you listen and look for it. You know, I hear some say that the red cardinals, the males and females, that's a loved one that's passed, that's checking up on you, and I think that's pretty neat. But for me, it's like there's a song and I can't think of the title of it. And some of you guys probably would know it. And one of the verses is Big Boys Don't Cry. And that was the song that was playing on the radio in the car when my father had told us that mom had passed away because she had battled cancer for almost a year and a half. And back then, we didn't have the technology, the science, and the medical to handle breast cancer. It was kind of a death sentence. And it was a long, drawn out death sentence. We've come so far, right? In the last 40, 50 years. And I can't wait to see where it goes in the next 5 years. We'll be living till we're 150. But no, writing the book is part of what I deem to be my recovery. And a lot of people think, well, when they think of recovery, they think of, physically being able to do things. But I'm telling you right now, if you go through a traumatic life event, it will change you. I can't explain to you why or how, but all I can tell you is you're not the same individual when you come out than it is when you went in. I've seen people revert back to the old self. But for most of us, it's different. And you have two choices at that point. You can either deal with what you went through and try to work through it, or you can try to bury it just so that you can survive through the day. And I see that so often with a lot of our vets that have seen traumatic things, that they bury it just to forget for a while. But it keeps trying to pop back up, right? And the only ones they feel they can talk to are other people, other vets that had gone through similar. My dad was that way. He served 2 tours in Vietnam. And when he passed away just before he was 40, he was a lieutenant colonel in the medical field. He had gained rank pretty fast, as many did over in Vietnam. But he didn't come back the person that had left. He had seen so much bloodshed. And he was a music buff, a reel-to-reel buff, somebody that wanted to tape things, and he had the big reel-to-reels, right? And I can remember one of them of where he had, and this was against rules that they had, but that there were a number of patients in dire strait that the medevac helicopter was going to get. And the helicopter ended up getting shot down. And you could hear it. The fear, the screaming on the reel-to-reels. And he ended up being the only survivor. And he was manning the guns at the door of the chopper. He always felt that, his way was drinking. He went to drinking to try to forget. But he couldn't forget. He couldn't forget the kid that he had adopted over there that had taken a bullet to the head And he used to wear the bullet around his neck on a necklace. But they had saved the boy, and the boy stayed in their hooch within the confines of where they were set up. And I know he didn't have much thought when it came to the Purple Hearts. And this isn't to take away from any of you guys that got it, but his feeling was when he was out and the only man left and he had bullet holes through his legs and one through his shoulder, he got nothing. Nothing. They didn't even want to hear about it. He wasn't supposed to be on that run to start with, but they lost everybody on a chopper. It was only later, during one of his drinking things, and they had like this little bridge that went across this waterway, right, to get from one side to the other. And he was headed back for his tent, where he stayed. And he was so drunk he fell off the bridge and busted his jaw. Guess where he got the Purple Heart? Yeah. Was he deserving of it for other things? Yes. But that also tells me there's so many vets that are deserving that never get it because they won't talk about it. But that's what I mean by having it buried underneath. Instead of dealing with something. And Amos and Jason, you guys both seem like you're straightforward guys. You see a problem, solve the problem, move on. That's kind of how you do things. And that works for a lot of people. I try to be like that. But a lot of times, if it's depending upon the situation, there's sometimes I just stifle it and move on and pretend like it didn't have any effect on me. Pretend enough so that even I believe it didn't have an effect on me. But only years later, or even months later, it would resurface its ugly head. So, writing the book is more about recovery. Will the book ever get published, be seen by others? Only God knows that. But at the very least, it's helping me remember things that I had forgotten and bringing things to light that I buried. You know, people say you shouldn't pick at a scab because it'll just keep being an open wound. I get it. But if you don't take care of the wound with triple antibiotics, you know, covering it up, putting a Band-Aid on it, and doing it the right way, you're just going to have a scab that's going to peel off at some point and open that wound back up. But you won't have a choice of when and where. Me, I'm trying to do that when and where now. Let's get it out. Let's see it for what it really is. And in the end, you're a survivor. Right? That's what we all want. We want to be a survivor. To those of you that have led a pretty carefree life, you probably don't understand what I'm talking about. But if you've had, at times, volatile issues going on around you, you totally understand. You may not agree with how I'm going about it, but you definitely understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So yesterday it was a quiet Sunday for me, and I thought, well, let me go down to the shop and let me see if I can't do some more on this writing, right? And when I got down there, I was trying to force myself to start writing, and that doesn't work. I spent 20 minutes wasting a lot of time because I didn't know where to start and where to end. I was trying to get a starting point and then go. What I ended up doing was the best thing to do is to listen to what you've already written. Reading it is one thing, but listening to it is something else. So I decided that I would, because I have an AI program that will allow me to hear it in a man's or woman's voice, sexy or to the point, assertive. So I opted to try the sexy female reading my written words already. And by the time she got done telling the audience if they were reading the book through her, it almost made me want to have another heart attack, another quadruple bypass. She made it sound so fun, so sexy. So I knew that wasn't going to work. So I tried the male voice with a little bit of assertiveness. And that came across like I should have bought the self help books and CDs and done the surgery myself. So that didn't work. So I started looking and I decided on the pea brained, brainless man. And I totally understood what I was trying to say. But what I ended up doing, honestly, in all honesty, I sat down and I listened to what I had already written and I just started writing. And while I was writing, I had Messenger go off. And Messenger, somebody had messaged me. So I popped out quick and I looked, and it was a psychic named Caitlin had messaged me wanting to be on my friends list, and she was telling me how pure of heart I was and the aurora, and I was thinking this gal's got it pretty spot on, right? She had me all the way to the point of where she said that somebody very close by you envies you and that you're in somewhat of a danger. She had me until that point because no one in their frickin' right mind would want to be like me, to envy me. And at that point, I felt like asking her, give me the name because I need to start the commitment papers right now to get that person the help that they really need at the psych ward. But I held back. And I thought about it for a little bit, and I couldn't shake her. You know how you do sometimes. I hadn't added her to my friends list, but I hadn't shaken, you know, trying to decide if I should respond back. So finally I decided I would test her abilities. So I wrote back, I'm broke. Do you see any money in the foreseeable near future? Crickets. Nothing. Nothing took place. No responses. So later that evening, when I talk to my daughter every night, that reminds me to take my meds, and we say we love each other too. I was explaining, what had gone on with the psychic Caitlin, that she hadn't responded back. So my daughter said not to worry, that she could give me a psychic reading. That for the first minute, it would only cost me 99 cents, and for every minute after, it was $15 a minute. I know where she gets this from, right? But today, I just thought, well, I don't need to explain, but what I wanted to explain of what I was up to. And personally, I don't ever think ever be a book on it, but I do think that it's helping me with the process. And that's all we can ask for is help with the process. I don't like things biting me in the ass. That means burying stuff that you need to take care of because you don't want to take care of it. You don't want to deal with it. You don't want nothing to do with it. And those will be the things that bite you in the ass. So on that note, you guys have a great Monday. And we'll get back to business tomorrow. But just give that some thought, of things that have happened in your past. Because if you have any age to you, you've gone through some pretty traumatic things at one time or another. We all do, right? It's called life. But it's how we deal with them. If you can learn to, and I'm not saying go see a therapist or anybody else. You get a best friend that doesn't gossip. But whether it's talking about it or putting it on paper or on a Word document, if you can get it out, you're going to be better off. You guys have a great day.